play and call it work.
Hey there guys, Quirk here from MiniWarGaming.com, and I have a very special treat for a very special, well, viewer. I actually got an email the other day from Dan. He says, "Hey Quirk, as requested in your sit and talk, here is a request for some advice if you have the time. I am a new Space Marines player, getting a bit better but still probably noob. Our local hobby store is quite small and we normally don't get a huge amount of time to game, so we tend to just play PowerPoints and go kill each other. I played my first proper game with tactical objectives today and won 11-8. Yay! Was nearly a table though, boo. However, the game before that I played against Magnus. I think the game was 50 or 60 power. I had 6 last cannons and 4 missile launchers directed at him, and I think by the end I had done 4 wounds to him, and he had killed my whole army. The rest of the other guys in the army was a few horrors, flamers, and around a changeling, and I didn't get much of that killed. But it didn't do much to me except shoot a couple of smites and flame stuff. I'll try and give a brief rundown of the list. This is from memory. I was tabled or nearly enough by the end of turn 2. I know I probably built my list badly, but I would like you to change. About what I brought and general advice on how Space Marine Salamander army would beat Magnus would be great. So the Tzeentch list was 2 units of pink horrors, some demon sorcerer thing on chariot, 3 screamers, 3 flamers, big character flamer thing, changeling, and Magnus. Alright, and then the list that you brought was a captain with a Thunder Hammer Storm Shield, 5 company veterans, 3 flamers, a Melta, a bolter, and you try to play WYSIWYG, Primaris Lieutenant, Dreadnought with a twin last cannon, close combat weapon and a heavy flamer, a scout squad with bolters and a heavy bolter, 2 5-man tactical squads with flamers, a Hellblaster squad, a Predator with 4 last cannons, a Devastator squad with 4 missile launchers, and a Rhino that had the captain and the veterans in it at the start. Thanks in advance if you have any advice on list building, and tactics to get rid of Magnus, who seems to be able to do everything better than everyone. Kind regards, Dan." Well, Dan, I would love to help give you some advice on how to beat Magnus. So, what we're going to do in this video is we're going to take a look at your opponent's list in detail, find some weaknesses in that list, and then we're going to take a look at your list and see if we can't find some ways to tactically make it better at taking on Magnus and his demon army, as well as possibly finding some other additions to your army that might help you out in future battles. So, first things first, let's go ahead and take a look at the challenge. Starting off, we're going to take a look at the first thing you had on your list there, which was the pink horrors. Now, a unit of 10 horrors only costs a power level of 5. The thing you need to watch out for these guys, though, is they are movement 6, they have a ballistic skill of 4, they're the only version of the horror that has a shooting attack, strength and toughness 3, 1 wound apiece, 1 attack, leadership 7, and a 6-up save. So they seem pretty okay for 5 points, but they have a number of special rules you need to watch out for. First one is demonic, giving them a 5-up invulnerable save. Then they have ethereal form. Now this is an ability that only applies to Tzeentch demons, but it gives you +1 to their invulnerable save. So now these guys have a 4-up invulnerable save, meaning on average half the attacks that are getting wounding and going through on them are actually going to go through. So you got to take that into consideration when you're trying to math hammer this out. They also have the ability Demonic Ritual, so if at any point in time you have a Chaos character forfeit their movement, they can summon them in, rolling 3 dice looking for a 5 or higher. Now, other special rules that they have here is Magic Made Manifest. If a unit of pink horrors attempts to manifest a psychic power each friendly phase and deny 1 psychic power each friendly phase. However, they can only do so rolling a single d6 for the psychic test, which means they can only try and cast Smite on a 5+. So you got to watch out for them because they can cast Smite. They have a 33% chance of pulling it off, and it can be quite annoying. It also means that if you roll rather low on some of your psychic tests, a opponent could deny it with a single die roll. When you're looking at the opponent and the list that he has for this army, probably not going to have to worry about that because Magnus is going to be doing most of the denying. Also with that, they have a couple different items there. The demonic icon, which is one of my personal favorites, means that when you roll a 1 when taking a morale test, instead of them fleeing, reality blinks and you actually get to add d6 pink horrors to the unit. So gotta watch out for that, even though it's it only has a 16% chance of happening. It can happen, and it is very frustrating when you kill off 2 or 3 models, hope that they all roll high on the morale check, end up passing the morale check with a 1 and adding even more horrors for you to deal with later on. They also have the Instrument of Chaos, which allows them to add 1 to their advance and charge rolls. So now they're pretty much going to be able to get anywhere they want to be, and adding that +1 to the charge rolls means that it's going to be even harder for you to get away. Now, that does mean that they can't declare a charge outside of 12 inches, but it does mean that those 12, 10, 11-inch charges are going to be even more viable for the unit of pink horrors. So As for faction keywords, they have Chaos, Tzeentch, and Demon. They are Infantry, Psychers, and Horror as well. Now, one thing that works a little bit weird with the Horrors is that they have a special rule called Split, where each time a pink horror is slain, you can add 2 blue horrors to the unit, and each time a blue horror is slain, you can add a pair of brimstone horrors. Now, a pair of brimstone horrors is only the single base. You don't get to add 2 bases, but it is something that can be added on there. If you're playing match play, you do have to put the points into consideration here. They have to be your reinforcement points set aside so that you can actually add them on. It's not too expensive because I'm pretty sure a pair of blue horrors is 10 points or 5 points apiece, and then brimstone horrors are only 2 points. But it does add up over a while. Now, from experience, I've noticed that this is a little bit of a trap. So this is something that you can consider when you're playing your opponent, because when you consider it, it's not like the old rules where when a pink horror dies, you create a new unit of blue horrors. The blue horrors are actually added to the unit, which gives you more models to kill. So once you start chopping through the pink horrors and the blue horrors and the brimstones, it's not difficult to get to the point where your opponent is rolling a morale check at D6 plus a certain number. I've had games where it's been D6 plus 10, D6 plus 12. I'm pretty sure in one of the battle reports you've seen, it was D6 plus 18. So I still tried to roll it, hoping to get that 1. As soon as I failed that 1, that entire unit fled. Also means that if a pink horror flees, he's not dying, so he doesn't get to split, and those reinforcement points that your opponent had will be lost. So that's one thing to consider right there. They are a little bit of a pain. They can be a very difficult unit to get off of objectives. It can be a very difficult unit to kill with that 4-up invulnerable save. The ability to split and add more models to it as well. The fact that both the pink and blue horrors can cast smite. Brimstone horrors can try and cast smite as well, but if they do, they end up dying in the process. So it's a nice way for you to kind of kill off some guys if you want to. Or if you get it down to just the unit of brimstone horrors, just keep that in mind when your opponent's trying to cast them, because you do have to nominate a model in the unit to cast smite, which also gives them the ability to kind of aim their smite a little bit. You can have a unit of pink, blue, and brimstone horrors spread out over a long distance, and even though you have a model within 2 inches of the unit, your opponent can nominate a different model in the unit that's closer to another model on the table and smite them instead. So keep that in mind when dealing with these horrors. So let's go ahead and move on to the next unit. The next unit that you have on your list there is some demon sorcerer thing on a chariot. Now, going by that description, the only thing I can assume you're talking about is the Herald of Tzeentch on a burning chariot. This is one of the HQ choices that are available in the army. It is a power level of 7. It has a movement of 14, so it can fly across the board wherever it wants to. Weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 5. It has 8 wounds, 3 attacks, a leadership of 8, which doesn't really matter too much unless you're giving it some sort of a psychic challenge there. Has a stat save of a 5-up, but again, it does have the demonic and ethereal form rules, which stack up to give it a 4-up invulnerable save. The weapons that it has available to it is the Ritual Dagger. Its strength user -1 AP and 1 damage, but each time this weapon slays an enemy model, the wielder recovers 1 wound lost early in the battle, so it's a nice way for your opponent to kind of keep that model alive on the board. It also has Lamprey Bites, which are strength 6, -3 AP, and 2 damage apiece. And it has the ability that if the Herald of Tzeentch makes any close combat attacks, you can actually have these, or sorry, close combat attacks with the attack. You can have the Screamers make 2 additional attacks using this weapon profile. So it can stack up quite a few attacks with those Lamprey Bites. Then we also have the Slashing Talons, strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. And if you were to attack with this, then your Screamers can make 4 additional attacks using this weapon. Now, because of the weapon profile and the breakdown of it here, it basically means that if you want to use the Lamprey Bites and the Slashing Talons and the Ritual Dagger, you'll have to use 1 attack with the Ritual Dagger, trying to get that 1 attack in. But that then means that you can make 1 attack with the Lamprey Bites, which becomes 3 attacks. And then when you do one with the Slashing Talons, it goes from 4 attacks to 5 attacks. So the attack profile of 3 can actually break down into, well, quite a few attacks here. We have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attacks in total coming off of that attack profile of 3, so you got to watch out for that. Now, the Herald of Tzeentch can take a Staff of Change. This boosts the smite ability from 18 inches to 24 inches, so he can stand quite a good distance back and still throw those smites around. You can also have the Herald of Tzeentch be accompanied by 3 blue horrors. Now, a 3 blue horrors addition makes it so that any psyker within 9 inches of this must subtract 1 from their psychic tests. So it's a nice little 9-inch bubble of making it more difficult for your opponent to cast those psychic powers. Also has the Herald of Tzeentch special rule, which adds 1 to the strength characteristic of any Tzeentch demon within 6 inches of 1 or more models with this ability. So again, it's going to be able to make it so that your pink horrors are now striking at strength 4, your blue horrors are striking at strength 3, and your brimstone horrors are now striking at strength 2 when we're looking at the models that we've previously looked at in this lineup. So if you have a Herald of Tzeentch chilling around a giant unit of horrors, there's a good chance he's probably want to get that charge off and throw some attacks around, and those attacks with that buff can actually do some damage. Now, the Herald is able to manifest a single psychic power and knows the psychic powers from the Table of Tzeentch. The Table of Tzeentch has a few powers available to it. I'll get to those in a minute, but the big one here is the Smite. If your opponent takes a Staff of Change, that means he's got the 24-inch Smite. He's going to be standing back with a 14-inch move and just cracking out those Smites all over the place. Keywords that we have here are Chaos, Tzeentch, and Demon. He's also a character, a chariot, a horror, has fly, is a psyker, and a Herald of Tzeentch. So with that character keyword means that if your opponent opts to forfeit the movement with this Herald and has the reinforcement points available if you're playing match play, can roll those 3 dice and try and summon in another unit of pink horrors, so it can be quite annoying dealing with that later on. All in all, it's a neat little model that flies around the board, casting Smite, grabbing objectives, and in some cases actually doing quite a bit of damage with its attacks, although with the weapon skill of 4, it's only really going to be getting a few attacks in there. But he does benefit from his own Herald of Tzeentch special ability, so that Strength 3 becomes Strength 4. And, well, it also stacks up with the Lamprey Bites and the Slashing Talons, so watch out for those. It can be a beast in close combat if need be. So that's pretty much everything for the Herald of Tzeentch. Fairly basic model, very fast, very annoying, very versatile, and he will come in later when we do the full army overview. But for now, that's all I have to say about him. After we take a look at the Herald on Burning Chariot, we're going to go ahead and look at the things that carry that chariot around, the Screamers themselves. They come in a unit of 3, they have a power level of 5, they are the fast attack option for a Tzeentch army, and, well, they are very good at what they do. They have a movement of 16, a weapon skill of 4, they don't shoot, so there's no ballistic skill profile, but their strength and toughness 4, 2 wounds apiece with 3 attacks apiece, leadership 7, and 6 up save. But again, we're looking at the demonic and ethereal form there, so they actually have a 4-up invulnerable, as well as demonic ritual, so you can summon these in as well. The attack profile that they have there is a Lamprey Bite, and this is one attack that each of the models can make. It's strength +2, looking at strength 6, has an AP of -3 and a damage of 2, but again, it does have the stipulation here that a model can only make a single attack with this weapon each time it fights. So with those 3 attacks, you're looking at 3 attacks at strength 6, -3, 2 damage apiece, and then you're looking at, 3 attacks like that, and you're looking at an additional 6 attacks with regular strength, no AP, 1 damage apiece. One of the things they're very good at doing here, but it also kind of negates their ability to fight in close combat, is their slashing attack, where if this unit advances and moves over an enemy unit, you can choose to have one of the units that it went over roll a d6 for each screamer in the unit, and any roll of a 6 inflicts a mortal wound on the enemy. So when you consider that you're looking at a unit of 3, just math hammering this out right now, on average, if you get all 3 of them to fly over a unit, rolling those 3 dice, you have a 50% chance of rolling a single 6, putting the numbers out there for you in the most basic form possible. So you'd have to fly over a unit twice in order to pretty much get 1 6 on there. Now, you can spike the dice, you can roll horrible all game, it does happen. I personally don't like this ability because when you do it, you actually lose the ability to charge, because the Screamers have nothing in their profile that lets them advance and charge. So it almost, again, seems like a little bit of a trap there. You're going to be trying to advance over the unit looking for those hard 6s as opposed to going in, charging it, and getting those Lamprey Bites, which on average can do quite a bit of damage to whatever they're attacking. Keywords we're looking at here again are Chaos, Tzeentch, and Demon. They're also Cavalry, Fly, and Screamer. So all in all, nothing really crazy about these guys except for the fact that when they get into combat, they can tarp it, they can fly into combat if they need to, and if you have a model that has, say, 1 wound left and an impossible save of some kind, your opponent may start trying to fly these guys over, or advancing and flying these guys over to get that last lucky 6 to slashing attack and mortal wounded. But not much to say about the Screamers. In this list, they seem to be the objective grabbers or the flankers. Well, again, we'll get back to them when we take a full look at the entire army as a whole. We've taken a look at the Screamers, the crazy fast melee unit of the Tzeentch force. Now let's take a look at the elite option Flamers. These have a power level of 5. They have a movement of 12, weapon skill 5. They're not the best in combat, but they have a ballistic skill of 3+. They have strength 4, toughness 4, 2 wounds apiece, 2 attacks apiece unless you have the Pyrocaster, which is 3 attacks, leadership 7, and a 6-up save. Again, though, we're looking at that demonic and ethereal form as well as demonic ritual, so they can be summoned in. All in all, these guys are really, really, really good because they have a movement of 12, and the only weapon they have is an 8-inch flamer called the Flickering Flames. It is a pistol D6, strength 4, AP -1, 1 damage apiece, but here's the kicker. it automatically hits. So with the profile being a pistol, it means that they can fire this in close combat. So you're not going to be worrying too much about that weapon skill 5. You're going to be really counting on getting those D6 hits per guy. At strength 4, -1 means that you're dropping quite a few saves down to, well, the below half average, and you're doing 1 damage apiece. So these guys seem to be your anti-infantry, your anti-orc, your pretty much anybody who has a save of 4 or better that you're going to be bringing in a horde. This is your answer to that, because they have those D6 attacks apiece, which means that on average you're looking at 10 hits per unit. Strength 4, usually you're going to be damaging at toughness 3, so that's going to be on a 3+. So you're looking at about 7 wounds. With that -1, it's either going to mean they're looking at a 6-up save, a 5-up save, sometimes even no save. So these guys are amazing for what you're paying for, and you got to watch out for them. They are the answer to any of your guys who are hiding out somewhere in large groups. They are designed to jump across the board and take you off of objectives. They are just an absolute pain, and the amount of damage they can throw is ridiculous. It could even be threatening to some of the larger options like your lords, knights, land raiders, large vehicles. Anything with a lot of wounds, it's definitely an answer to. And with the mobility that they have available to them, they could even go character hunting if they wanted to. So you got to watch out for them. Again, with that power level of 5 and demonic ritual, it's not difficult to summon them in. So if you have your opponent spending any time not moving one of their characters, there's probably a good chance they're going to bring these guys in, because they are a force to be reckoned with. On the plus side though, if at any point in time your opponent does summon them in, it means they're not going to be able to move in that movement phase, because it's at the end of the movement phase. And because their pistols are only range 8, you don't have to worry about getting shot the turn they come in. So that is a nice little buffer that you can kind of keep in the back of your mind. But just be aware that if they get a turn to move, there's a good chance they're going to get in range to shoot something, because they have a 20-inch threat range. So keep that in mind. We'll get back to them when we take a look at the entire army as a whole. Next up on Dan's list is the big character flamer thing. Again, assuming I'm guessing correctly here, we're looking at the big brother of the flamers, the Exalted Flamer. Now, he loses a little bit of movement. He's only movement 10 as opposed to the flamers, which are movement 12. Again, you're looking at a weapon skill, a ballistic skill of 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, 4 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 8, and a 6-up save. Again, we're going to have the demonic and ethereal form, giving it the 4-up invuln, and a demonic ritual ability. So with a power level of 4, it is very, very easy to bring this guy in. He fills one of your elite slots, and he has 2 different profiles for his flame attack. One of them is the Fire of Tzeentch, the pink fire, which is, again, the range 8, pistol D6, strength 5 this time, -2 AP and 1 damage apiece. So it's a beefed up version of the flickering flames that your flamers have. But he also has another version of the Fire of Tzeentch, which is the blue flame. It's an 18-inch range, heavy D3, strength 9, AP -4, and D3 damage apiece. Here's the catch though, this one does not automatically hit. You are going to be looking at throwing those 3+, or if you move those 4+ to get it. But again, with a movement of 10 and a range of 18, that means he has a 28-inch threat range with that flame, hitting half the time on those D3 attacks. So again, rolling on averages and rounding up, you're looking at about 2 attacks out of that. So on average, again, one of those will hit. Still, if one of these hit, there is a chance it can do a massive amount of damage. Being strength 9, -4 AP means you're either relying on invulnerable save, or you're going to be hoping for a 6-up save if you had a 2-up to begin with. And regardless, it's still going to put that D3 damage in on you as well. So definitely a threat to be reckoned with. Crazy how much damage this guy can throw out, especially if you have more than one of them rocking around the board. If you see one of these guys not moving in the movement phase, make sure you are staying out of that 18-inch bubble for the heavy D3, because it is absolutely devastating when it does get a lucky hit in there. This is one of those models I can see your opponent actually rolling or re-rolling using the command point to get a higher roll on the heavy D3 just to make sure that these do some damage. With the strength 9, it means that he's even wounding land raiders on a 3. With the -4, means that land raiders relying on a 6-up, and the D3 damage means that there's a good chance 2 or 3 shots from this thing is actually going to cripple that land raider. So watch out for the Exalted Flamers. They are designed to kill whatever they want, especially with the weapon profile. The good thing though is that they are a individual model. The bad thing is that it does have the keyword character, so it's very easy for your opponent to hide these behind other flamers, behind pink horrors, behind anything that doesn't have the character keyword. It's also got the fly keyword, so if you happen to catch it in combat, it can just jump right out and keep on going. So keep an eye out for that. It does have the keywords Chaos, Tzeentch, and Demon. Keep that in mind when we talk about the lists later on as an army as a whole. It also has the infantry keyword. It doesn't really come up in this army showcase, but just letting you know for future reference if it does come up. Moving on from the big character flamer thing, also known as the Exalted Flamer, we go on to one of the HQ choices. This is by far one of the most annoying models for any opponent playing against the Tzeentch army. It is the changeling. It has a power level of 5, and if you're playing in any match play, just to let you know, he has a point cost of 100 points. So not the cheapest model out there, but definitely worth his weight in gold. The changeling has a movement of 6, weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 3, 4 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 8, and strength 6. And he is equipped with something called the Trickster's Staff. It has a strength of star, an AP of star, and a damage of star. But the ability for this one is really where it kicks in. When the changeling fights, he can choose the melee weapon carried by an enemy infantry model within 1 inch of it. The Trickster's Staff uses the weapon's profile until the end of the phase, so it's very easy for you to start taking over the weapons or mimicking the weapons of the sergeants in units, of the characters in units, because a lot of characters do have the infantry keyword. So if you are relying on the strength or power or whatever you have of one of your crazy characters that has the infantry keyword, watch out for this guy because he will throw it right back in your face. Again, with that 6-up save, doesn't seem very good, but again, we're looking at the demonic and ethereal form, giving him the 4-up. Also has demonic rituals, so your opponent can summon these in, but this is the kicker. You can only ever have one of these models in your army. I'm pretty sure GW knew how amazing this model was, put that ritual in there just so that you could not stack some of the crazy abilities that are coming up in a second. One of the first things that we have here is the Formless Horror. When the changeling fights, you can choose an enemy infantry model within 1 inch of the changeling. The changeling has the model's weapon skill, strength, toughness, and attacks characteristics until the end of that phase. So not only is he mimicking the weapon profile of the character he is mimicking, he's also mimicking the entire stat line. Oh man, that becomes amazing. It's basically going to become a mirror match where it comes down to whose dice are better, or even more so, who gets to attack first. So with the movement of 6, it's very difficult for the changeling to get that first turn charge, considering the rest of the army is so incredibly fast. It's difficult for him to kind of keep up with everybody, which helps because of the next rule he has called the Locus of Transmogrification. So friendly Tzeentch demon units within 9 inches of this model, when they are attacked, are surrounded by a twisting aura of more fluff, fluff, fluff. Basically, your opponent must subtract 1 from the hit roll attacks made against the unit. So any unit within 9 inches of the changeling getting attacked by anything has a -1 to hit. So suddenly your snipers that are hitting on 2s are now hitting on 3s. Your guns that are Space Marines, so hitting on 3s, are now hitting on 4s. It is taking a 16% stat line away from your averages there. So it's definitely a big hit right there, especially since it's a 9-inch bubble. So he's going to be hanging out with the rest of the army. He's going to be annoying because he does have the character keyword, so you can't just pick him out of a crowd. He can bubble wrap himself with the horrors, with the flamers, most likely with the horrors, but definitely able to bubble wrap himself very, very well there. And it essentially makes, if everybody's grouped up together, the entire army very, very difficult to hit. So he, in my opinion, so far is priority number 1 until we get on to the next person on your list, which is Magnus. But if you're able to take out Magnus, if we're going for target priority, this is your next target priority. You need something fast. You need something to take him out because the amount of dice that you are going to be losing out on for those hit rolls will get frustrating. If you're playing a guard army and you're firing into a unit and you're hitting on 5s, you're now hitting on 6s. That is the worst feeling ever. And especially playing a Tzeentch player, I personally don't run this model because I find them to be very annoying. But if you're playing in tournaments or if you're playing competitive, you will see the changeling in any list for a Tzeentch player. So I'm going to get into a little bit more with him later on when we do an army overview and when I take a look at how you would normally see this army deployed as a whole. But for now, that's all I'm going to say about him because I don't want to get onto too much of a rant. Let's move on to the last item on the list, which is Magnus. Here he is, the big man himself, the bane of what I'm assuming is Dan's existence right now when he's looking at this army. Magnus the Red. He has a power level of 21 and he is a Lord of War. So before we get into anything further than that, the fact that he's a Lord of War means that you are guaranteed to see him in a second detachment when you're looking at army compositions and things like that. So keep that in mind. He's on his own detachment. Not really going to come into play too much with Dan's list, but for anybody else who plays tournament style or sees Magnus on a regular basis, keep that in mind. He does have to be in his own detachment because he does have the Lord of War specification. Now, let's move on to his profile. He has a movement star, so he is restricted to a movement table. Depending on how much damage he's taken will affect his movement overall. I'll get to the table in a moment. He has a weapon skill, blitz skill of 2+. He has strength 8, toughness 7, 18 wounds. Attack profile is again on the table, leadership 10, and a save of 3+. When we take a look at the table, he is, when wounds remaining is 10 to 18. He has a movement of 16. He has 7 attacks. Oh, that's gross. When he drops down to 5 to 9 wounds, he has a movement of 14 and 6 attacks. And when he's down to 1 to 4 wounds remaining, he still has a movement of 12 and 5 attacks. Oh, he is a beast. No matter how you look at it, he is still crazy powerful in combat. Weapons he's carrying, the Blade of Magnus. It is a strength times 2, so you're looking at a strength 16 weapon here. AP -4 and 3 damage apiece. Special thing to note right here is that if any characters are destroyed by this weapon, you can add a Chaos Spawn to your army. Set that Chaos Spawn up within 6 inches of Magnus and more than 1 inch away from enemy models. Whoa, that can be disgusting. It doesn't follow the same restrictions as the 9 inches away from enemy models, so you can actually place that in certain positions to block people from getting more into combat with Magnus, or you can use that to actually block vehicles from getting out of combat. You can use that to jump on objectives. It can come in, not very often, but if it does come into play, you will see it very, very frustrating later on. Moving on to his abilities, he has a special ability called Death to the False Emperor. That basically means that when you are attacking anything that is a, I'm forgetting what it's called, Imperium unit, anytime you roll a 6+ to hit with with an attack against something with the Imperium keyword, you actually get to make an additional attack roll. So with those 7 attacks, he's averaging at least 1/6, so that 1/6 is going to generate him an additional attack, and on the 2+, it will more than likely hit. Also has the special ability Crown of the Crimson King, meaning that Magnus has a 4-up invulnerable save. Whew, that's crazy. But on the plus side here, he doesn't have the ethereal form, so it doesn't get the +1 by being Tzeentch. So keep that in mind as we move on further a little bit as we go here. Has the Gaze of Magnus. So if Magnus manifests a smite power, he inflicts D6 mortal wounds or 2d6 mortal wounds on a roll of 10 or more. So that doesn't follow the same rule as normal smite where you need to roll more than 10. It's on the roll of 10 or more. One thing I haven't gotten to mention yet is that Magnus has the psychic power bonus. So when he's at full wounds, he gets +2 to all of his psychic tests. When he's at the mid-range one, he gets +1, and then when he's down to 4 or less wounds remaining, he doesn't get any bonus. Now that being said, that means that when he tries to cast Smite, if your opponent rolls an 8 or higher, he is throwing 2d6 mortal wounds at the closest target. Oh, it's disgusting. But on the plus side here, his Smite power is not extended to any specific range, so it's not getting the plus at all. So you're still limited to that 18 inches. Keep that in mind later on, because a lot of the Tzeentch stuff does get the plus to the distance of Smite. Magnus does not. The last ability that he has available here is the Primarch of the Thousand Suns. This is one of the most annoying rules when dealing with Magnus. He can re-roll invulnerable saves of 1. So it's gross. Basically, you can re-roll hit rolls of 1 and invulnerable save rolls of 1 for any friendly Thousand Sun unit within 9 inches of Magnus. Because you're looking at a Demon's list, he is the only Thousand Sun unit on the board, but he still gets to re-roll those hit rolls of 1 and invulnerable saves of 1. Absolutely disgusting. Last thing we have to mention here is that Magnus can attempt to manifest 3 psychic powers and deny 3 psychic powers every turn. He knows all of the psychic powers from the Dark Hereticus discipline, and it's gross because he gets that plus. Faction keywords, this is where it's going to come important. He has the Chaos, Tzeentch, Heretic Astartes, and Thousand Suns keywords right there. Keep those in mind. He's also a character, but he's got more than 10 wounds, or 10 or more wounds, so he is targetable. He's a monster. He's a demon. So now we've got the 2 keywords joining together for a lot of stuff here. Mostly the changeling. He is a demon, and Tzeentch means that he gets the -1 to hit if he's within 9 inches of the changeling. He's also a Primarch. He has fly. He's a psyker, and Magnus the Red. So all that stacking on top of itself makes it really, really gross to have to deal with him. But then you have to look at the actual psychic powers that he has available, because that just makes him even more ridiculous. The first thing that he has here is Infernal Gaze. It's a manifestation of 5, which means at full health, he just needs to not roll double ones to pull this off. You can select an enemy unit within 18 inches of the psyker, roll 3 dice, and they suffer a mortal wound for each roll of 4+. Not the best, but in all honesty, he can cast all 3 of these powers, so you gotta watch out for that. He also has the ability called Warp Time. This is one that your opponent will use religiously. It has a casting value of 6, so that means your opponent needs to roll a 4 to do it. Pick a friendly Heretic Astartes unit within 3 of the Psyker. He is a Heretic Astartes unit, and he's within 3 inches of himself, so that means he can immediately move as if it were the movement phase. You can't use Warp Time more than once each Psychic phase, which is absolutely fine, because if you're not playing, if you're playing match play, then you can only cast 1 psychic power per phase. If you're not, you're playing a friendly game, just keep that in mind. Your opponent can't keep stacking that ability, so you can't just keep flying all over the board. That being said, though, when you're looking at Magnus's movement of 16 and then he does a warp time, that means he's moving 32 inches across the board. If you're doing just a basic Dawn of War deployment, that means he can jump from one side of the board to the next. Makes it really, really difficult to guard your stuff from his ridiculously powerful smites. The last power that he has here is Prescience. It's a casting value of 7, so Magnus just needs a 5 at full health. You select a Heretic Astartes unit within 18 inches of the Psyker, and you can add 1 to all hit rolls made for that unit at the start of your next Psychic phase. Keep this in mind. Your opponent should and probably won't ever use that ability unless he's attacking something that gives him -1 to hit, because Magnus already hits on a 2+ rerolling 1s. So if he knows he's going to be attacking something that has -1 to hit, or if he's attacking somebody that only hits on 6s, like, I don't know, an assassin, he can throw that special ability out there. It means that those minuses that are getting affected get kind of negated a little bit. So it gives him a bit of a buff there, but if your opponent's casting that, there's a good chance he's planning on attacking something special next turn. Keep that in mind when you're watching somebody do that. All in all, though, Magnus is a absolute just pain train when he comes on the board. It is very difficult to take him down, especially when you boost all the abilities for him. Dan, let's go ahead and take a look at the army as a whole, see what they do as a synergy for the army, and let's find some weaknesses to this army and find a way to possibly kill Magnus turn 1. So now that we've seen all the models individually, let's take a look at the army as a whole. The only way I could see your opponent actually being able to bring these models is if he brought them in 2 patrol detachments and then 1 super heavy auxiliary detachment. So that's 2 patrols with 1 HQ, 1 troop, and then 0 to 2 of the elites, fast attacks, heavy supports, and flyers. So looking at the first patrol detachment, for the HQ choice, he could do either the Herald on chariot or the changeling, and then one of the units of pink horrors. So either way, he's going to be able to mix them up like that, and then take the flamers, the exalted flamer, the screamers. Then for the super heavy auxiliary, he's obviously going to take Magnus because he's the Lord of the War. So that's going to be the 3 detachments that you can take in the point range that it would be for something like that. If you're playing the match play with power level, I'm assuming you guys are just doing 3 detachments. Let's take a look at the benefits that the army gives as a whole, how they'd be played out, and how they'd be deployed. So as a whole, the one thing that your opponent's army is going to be doing is trying to keep everybody within 9 inches of the changeling so that everybody gets -1 to hit. So it's going to shut down a lot of the shooting that you're going to be able to do. It's going to make it so very, very difficult. And with everything bubble wrapping that changeling, unless you've got something with the snipe special rule or the ability to target out a individual character, it's going to be very difficult for you to get rid of that buff your opponent has. So when we take a look at your army, we'll see if there's anything that you can do to try and mitigate that or take out the changeling as a whole. When you look at the way the army is going to play, one of the biggest drawbacks to the army is that Magnus is so incredibly fast, and your opponent really wants to get him into close combat. If he doesn't, it's just going to be a target that gets shot at for turn after turn after turn. So that being said, with him moving 16 in the movement phase, then warp timing for another 16, it's very easy for him to get out of that 9-inch bubble of the changeling, and that makes it, again, very easy for you to shoot him without suffering the -1. The negative and the drawback here is that Magnus has that 4-up invulnerable save with the re-rolling 1s. So if you have anything that you can do that would mitigate the invulnerable save, like a null zone psychic power or something along those lines, definitely try and get that off. It will be difficult with Magnus being able to deny it +2, but it's worth a try. Along with that, you're also going to have a lot of things moving very quickly across the board, like the screamers and the flamers and the chariot. Once they start coming in, they're going to want to try and get in combat, and they're going to try and tie up things like your vehicles so they can't shoot. It's going to try and tie up your Devastator squads that they can't shoot, your crazy fast things. It's going to try and shut them down as well. So that's going to be your target number 3, is taking out anything that's fast. The last thing that I would want to target in an army like this would be the pink hordes, because they only move 6 inches. They can try and cast a smite, but they only have a 33% chance of getting it off, and they can only do it once per phase. So you got 2 of them trying to cast that. They have to target the closest enemy within 18 inches, and there are ways to shut that down for an Imperium player. Along with that, you also have to worry about them carrying those icons. If you start taking out the pink horrors, they become the blue horrors and the brimstones and so on and so forth, your opponent's still going to try and roll on the morale check to see if he can get that lucky 1, but there will more than likely be a point that he will get to where he's just going to go ahead and spend the command points. With the detachments the way they're laid out, though, that means that this list maxes out at 3 command points because it's going to be battle forged. The patrol detachment does not give any additional command points. The auxiliary detachment for the super heavy doesn't give any command points, so the only command points this army is going to get is the 3 from being battle forged. So that's one of the nice little negatives right there. there's a good chance your opponent's going to want to save those command points for the very important rolls, like the last save on a model, the damage being able to do if he's got a lucky 11 or something like that with one of the Herald, or with the Herald or the changeling trying to cast a smite, or if he wants to try and get Magnus in there to get those 2d6 smites off. So watch out for those. All in all, this army does not have very many weaknesses, but the weaknesses that it does have are things like the changeling. Once you're able to target them and get them out, that's going to really mess up the army. Taking out your opponent's heavy hitters like the Exalted Flamer, who can do crazy damage to your vehicles, that's a good call. But your priority target, numero uno, is Magnus. You want to take him out. You want to get rid of him. And the way we're going to do that is when we take a look at Dan's list, we're going to see what he can do to make sure that he is shooting and killing Magnus as quickly as possible. So we've taken a look at the demon list as a whole. It's a very good list. It's a very powerful list. It's very difficult to take down. The biggest problem with it is the Magnus model flying around, doing crazy amounts of damage, killing whatever it wants. If there was no Magnus in this list, the list as a whole would be very subpar because it doesn't have a lot of very effective killing. It's very resilient, and there are ways to take that out, just volumes of fire, crazy amounts of damage, things like that. Making sure that your opponent does not get those 4-up invulnerable saves with some of the null zones is another way to do that. But all in all, it's Magnus. He's our #1 target. Let's take a look at Dan's list and see what we can do to get rid of him as fast as possible. Alrighty, so we've taken a look at all of Dan's opponents' list in excruciating detail to make sure that we know all the nuances of how it works, how it functions, where it wants to be, and how it's going to get there. Let's take a look at Dan's list, starting off with the first thing on that list, which is a captain with a Thunderhammer Storm Shield. Yes, the model that you're currently seeing right now does not have a Thunderhammer. Turns out we don't have a Thunderhammer Storm Shield regular captain in the studio, so we're just going to have to market Dave this for a little bit right now. Anyway, going to the captain himself, has a movement value of 6, a weapon skill, bliss skill 2+, strength 4, toughness 4, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 9, and a 3-up save. Now, you went ahead and switched out the weapons that it normally comes with, because he normally comes with a chain sword and a mastercrafted bolt gun. You got the bolt pistol for grenades and crack grenades. You went ahead and swapped out the chain sword and the mastercrafted bolt gun for a Thunderhammer and a Storm Shield. The Storm Shield provides your captain with a 3-up invulnerable save, which is quite nice, and the Thunderhammer doubles your strength, which is amazing, and then also gives you a bunch of modifiers to the hit, or probably not to the hit, to the AP value and the damage. So looking really quickly at the Thunderhammer, it's going to be, oh, I'm on the wrong page there. Let's jump back over here. Okay, so again, it's going to be strength times 2. I'm pretty sure it is -3 or -3 and 3 damage. But there's one thing to note about this really quickly is that when attacking with this weapon, you have to subtract 1 from the hit roll. So your captain goes from being a weapon skill of 2+ to basically 3+, which it's not too bad. It's very easy to hit on 3s, but you're going to get a little bit frustrated when you start rolling those 2s. As for the 1s, you don't really have to worry about it because of your ability called Rites of Battle, where you can re-roll hit rolls of 1 made for friendly chapter units within 6 inches of this model. He is a friendly chapter unit, and he's within 6 inches of himself, so he can re-roll those 1s. Special abilities that he also has, he has And They Shall Know No Fear, which allows you to re-roll the morale checks, and that's pretty much it for the abilities. You're also going to have things like the keyword Imperium, Adeptus Astartes, the chapter, which I'm pretty sure Dan said his chapter was Salamander, so we'll go over that in a little bit later. He's also a character, infantry, and a captain. Now, being a character means that he's not targetable unless he is the closest model or something with snipe starts shooting at him, which is quite nice. Gives him a little bit of defendability as long as there's some sort of a shield in front of him. And you're probably want to keep him very close to other models that are going to be shooting because you have that Rites of Battle ability allowing you the re-rolling of 1s. Now that's a nice ability to try and counteract the whole Locust ability that the Changeling gives out. So when you start rolling those 1s, it makes it a little bit easier. Again, it's only you have natural 1s though that you get to re-roll, so keep that in mind. That's going to be it for the captain. There's not a whole lot there. He's a power level of 5, so that's pretty good. He's also one of your HQ choices, so he fills in that slot for your detachment. But that being all said and done, let's move on to the next model, which is going to be your veterans. And here they are. This is a 5-man squad of company veterans. Now the way that you've kitted them out is you have 1 with the bolt gun, 3 flamers, and 1 with the melta because you like to play WYSIWYG. So taking a quick look at the company veterans, they have a power level of 3, which is actually pretty low for some guys that are as good as they are. They have a movement of 6, weapon skill, bliss skill 3, strength and toughness 4, 1 wound apiece, 2 attacks except for the veteran sergeant who has 3 attacks, and leadership 8 except for the sergeant who has leadership 9. Lastly, they have a 3-up save. Now again, you went ahead and swapped out a lot of the weapons there so that you went from having the basic bolt gun to having things like the Melta and the Flamer. So the Melta is actually a pretty good weapon right there to have swinging around because it's actually going to give you a lot of damage on things like Magnus. So when we take a look at the Melta gun that you have there, I'm pretty sure it was the... Is it a Combi Melta that they take? Nope, it's just a regular Melta gun. Okay. So looking at the Melta gun, it's a 12-inch range, Assault 1, Strength 8, minus 4 AP, and D6 damage. But if you're within half range of the weapon, so if you're within 6 inches, you're going to need to roll 2 dice and pick the highest. So with the Strength 8 means that if you're firing at Magnus, who is going to be your primary target, you are wounding him on 3s, which is fantastic. And that minus 4 means that he's going to be relying on his 4-up save, re-rollable, which is what we want him to be rolling. We don't care if it's re-rollable, we still want him to try and roll those 2s and 3s, or possibly roll the 1 just to re-roll another 1, 2, or 3. Then you get that D6 damage. Again, when you're firing at Magnus, this is where you want to start spending those command points. You want to start trying to get those big spikes in damage. So if you can get within half range to hit him with that Melta, go right ahead and do that, because that way you have a better chance of rolling the 6 and causing that crazy amount of damage. There's also a very good chance that your opponent's going to make Magnus the Warlord, which means he's going to have that 6-up, ignoring wounds, because that's probably one of the best Warlord traits for him, helps keep him alive. But again, if you start rolling those 6s, that means he's only on average going to mitigate 1 of the damage. Next up, what you have on there is the Flamers. So a Flamer is a 8-inch range, Assault D6, Strength 4, AP nothing, 1 damage apiece, but these hit automatically, which gives you a nice little ignorance of the changeling's ability to subtract 1 from your to hit rolls. It means you ignore the changeling as a whole. Fantastic to hear that. With the Strength 4 means that you can actually roast the pink horrors. You can cause some damage on Magnus, although you're only wounding on 5s, but they are D6 damage, or pardon me, Assault D6, so you're going to be able to get multiple hits in there with them. Also with the Salamander ability, you're going to be able to get extra damage in there as well. I'm going to go over the Salamander ability when we look at the army as a whole, but all in all, definitely a good thing to have right there. The bolt gun is just a regular bolt gun. You know, you're looking at rapid fire 1 hitting on 3s with the -1 means you're hitting on 4s, and your Strength 4, 1 damage apiece. So again, you're probably going to want to target some of the stuff like the horrors if they're close enough. But again, you're going to want to take out the things like the Screamers, the Exalted Flamer, and the Flamers themselves if you possibly can. All in all, they have the ability where they shall know no fear, so they can reroll those morale checks. You also have Command Squad Bodyguard, where you can roll a dice for each friendly chapter character that loses a wound while they're within 3 inches of the unit. On a 2+, it goes to the squad, and the squad doesn't suffer a wound; they just suffer a mortal wound. So it's kind of a catch-22 where it's almost like the old Lookout Sirs, but it basically means that on a 2+, it's going to go on one of those models, and they will die because they only have 1 wound apiece. But it's a good way to keep your captain alive, which is quite nice if you don't want to try and rely on that 3-up invulnerable save. So another thing to keep in mind is that it says when the character loses a wound. So if Magnus starts throwing out some mortal wounds his way, if he manages to roll a 1, you can on a 2+ pass off to somebody else and try and keep your captain alive a little bit longer. And that's pretty much it. You could have taken the option to give them storm shields. You opted not to. Probably a better choice right there, just so that they can go ahead and walk around with those weapons. And again, you like to play WYSIWYG, so I'm not going to really jump too far into that. Faction keywords, they are Imperium, Adeptus Astartes, Chapter Salamanders, and Infantry Company Veterans. That's going to be it for your veteran squad. Probably one of the better squads you want to have on the board, just trying to get in Magnus's face and firing those Flamers, firing those Meltas, maybe getting a couple lucky shots off with the Bolter, but all in all, they are one of the better squads you have available for dealing with Magnus when he gets up close. Continuing down the list, we're taking a look at your second HQ choice, the Primaris Lieutenant. So the Primaris Lieutenant has a movement value of 6, weapon skill 2, ballistic skill 3, strength and toughness 4, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, a leadership of 8, and a 3-up save. Now, you didn't say anything on the sheet on whether or not he was equipped differently, so I'm assuming he's just equipped with what he normally comes with, which is the Mastercrafted Auto Bolt Rifle, a Bolt Pistol, Frag Grenade, and Crack Grenade. Now, the Mastercrafted Auto Bolt Rifle is a 24-inch range, Assault 2, Strength 4, AP nothing, but 2 damage apiece rifle, which is amazing. It can do a lot of damage, especially when he's hitting on 3s. Again, with that -1 means you're only going to get half the shot, so maybe one of them will sneak through. But it's a wonderful weapon to have, especially with those 2 damage, because those can actually spike pretty good and start taking out things like these Screamers and the Flamers and stuff like that. He also has the special abilities where it is, and they shall know no fear, not too bad, but the one that you really want to keep in mind is the Tactical Precision, where you can re-roll wound rolls of 1 for any friendly chapter, Salamander, unit that is within 6 inches of a lieutenant. Good rule to keep in mind, especially when you start walking him right next to the captain, because now you're rerolling ones to hit and rerolling ones to wound. When those two are together and you have a unit within 6 inches of them, becomes really, really good, especially for your veteran squad, because that means they're going to be able to start spiking those damage rolls pretty well right there. Power level 5, so he's a bit pricey there as a single model. If you were to take 2 lieutenants, you'd be able to use the company hero special rule where they deploy together, and then all models in the unit, so both of them are set up together, so they're a single drop, and then they can split afterwards. Keywords for him is Imperium, Adeptus Astartes, Chapter Salamanders, Character, Infantry, Primaris, Lieutenants. Not really much more to say about him. Again, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you right now for your army is not going to have a whole lot as a individual model. It's when you start stacking them with the special abilities of the other models in the unit, in the army, as well as all the special rules that come with being a Salamander and a Space Marine, as also with the stratagems that you'll have available. So that's going to be it for the Primaris Lieutenant. Let's move on to the next option on your list. And that is a Dreadnought. Now, the Dreadnought that you have on the sheet is equipped with the Twin-Link Last Cannon, the Dreadnought close combat weapon with an inbuilt flamer. So good to have that right there. He's a power level 7, a little bit heftier, but when you consider how strong and durable he is, it definitely pays off. Movement value of 6, weapon skill, blitz skill 3+, strength 6, toughness 7, 8 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 8, and a save of 3+. When you look at the equipment that he comes with, you went ahead and gave him the Twin-Link Last Cannon. That is a 48-inch strength 9 -4 D6 damage gun, and it's heavy 2, so you're gonna get 2 shots out of that. Because he is he doesn't have any special rules to deny it. When you move him, he's going to be firing at -1, and if you're shooting at something that's within range of the changeling, it means that those last cannons are going to be hitting on 5. So keep that in mind when you are firing with him. Special abilities that he has a smoke launcher where once per game, instead of shooting any of your weapons, you can fire off the smoke launcher. It gives basically -1 to hit for anything shooting at him. I've never really seen that really come into play too much. It's much more effective to fire your last cannon than it is to try and stay alive for one more turn. Especially with the 8 wounds and no table to modify it, it's quite nice to have him just standing off in a corner firing off those shells. And then if something does try to get a little bit too close, you do have that hand flamer handy to try and roast anybody who gets a little too close to you, especially when they charge and you can overwatch them. Do be careful though, he does have the explodes result where on a roll of 6 he explodes everything within 3 inches of his D3 mortal wounds. That doesn't seem like that much if I say keep in the corner, but there is going to be a point when I reference a stratagem that's available with Dreadnoughts and how effective they can be for some of the models on the board. Otherwise, that's pretty much it for him. He's a vehicle, Adeptus Astartes, Chapter Salamander, and a vehicle Dreadnought. Again, that's not too bad when you look at the stat loadout they have for him. Again, you're trying to play WYSIWYG, so I'm not going to modify anything on your list when I'm going over the overview of your list, but there are a few things that I would change, especially when dealing with a list like this. But I will get to that when I show you the entire army. As for now, Dreadnoughts are amazing, fantastic at taking out big targets. We'll take a look at that when we get to the whole army. Let's move on to the next option, which is going to be your Scout Squad. Power level of 6, they are one of your troop choices, which is fantastic because the more troop choices you fill in, the better the detachments can become. So let's take a look at the Scouts as a whole. You have your Scouts moving 6 inches, weapon skill, blitz skill 3+, strength and toughness 4, 1 wound apiece, 1 attack except for your sergeant who has 2 attacks, leadership 7 except for your sergeant who has leadership 8, and a 4-up armor save. Now, in your description you said that they're all equipped with bolt guns and heavy bolters, which is not bad. The bolt guns are a 24-inch range, rapid fire 1, strength 4, no AP, 1 damage apiece, and the heavy bolter is a 36-inch range, heavy 3, strength 5, -1, 1 damage. Hitting on 3s means you're going to get quite a few hits out of that, but all in all, it's a little bit wonky. This is one of those things that I'm going to have you recommend that actually stands next to the Dreadnought, and I'll get to that reason when we go over the stratagems that you're going to want to use. Abilities that are available to them are things like, and they show no fear. Combat squads doesn't really apply because you only have a 5-man squad. If you had a 10-man squad, that would become apparent or something that we could use. They have concealed position, which is when you set up the army during deployment, they can actually be set up off the board, and then at the end of any, or pardon me, during the deployment, you can deploy them anywhere on the board that's at least 9 inches away from the enemy deployment zone. So if you're playing Dawn of War, you can actually deploy them further up the board. It's quite nice. It's not as good as the teleport strike where you can drop them wherever you want as long as you're 9 inches away from the enemy, but it is quite nice because that gives you better positioning later on in the game. It also means that you can benefit from the ability they have called Camo Cloaks, where if the enemy was to ever shoot at you while you have the Camo Cloaks, you add 2 to the saving throws for models that are in cover. And basically that means they're getting +1 to their save while in cover instead of, or probably +2 to their save instead of the +1. So if you're hiding out in ruins, that means that their save goes from a 4 up to a 2 up, which is fantastic. So I do very much appreciate you bringing these guys in. Gonna definitely benefit from using that. Some of the weapons that I would probably want to try and swap out from the bolt guns would be something like a sniper rifle to try and pick off the characters. But again, that's personal preference. We're going by your list, sir, and we will see what we can do with these guys. Let's go ahead and move on to the next thing, which is going to be your tactical squads. You've got 2 of them in your list. They have a power level of 5, movement 6, weapon skill plus skill 3 plus, strength and toughness 4, 1 wound, 1 attack except for the sergeant who has 2, leadership 7 except for the sergeant who has 8, and a 3-up save. In your description, you went ahead and explained that one of the models in each of the squads of 5 is carrying a flamer, which is fantastic. That's again going to be that D6 strength 4, 1 damage automatically hitting. Great for dealing with hordes and things like that, especially when you have to suffer that -1 to hit from the changeling. Let's go over the weapons that everybody else has. They all have bolt guns, so 24-inch range, rapid fire 1, strength 4, 1 damage, like we've seen before. They have these special abilities, and they shall know no fear. But the thing is, you are running 2 squads of 5, so they don't benefit from their second ability, which is combat squads, where you can, when deploying them, split them up into a 10-man squad into 2 5-man squads, which is totally fine and understandable. I personally don't like that rule anyway. It's not that I don't like it, I just don't use it. But I definitely prefer to have the 2 5-man squads running around. Keywords that they have as well is Imperium, Adeptus Astartes, Chapters, Salamanders, Infantry, and Tactical Squad. These guys are going to get a lot of benefits from being Salamanders and all the benefits that are going to apply from the characters that you have running around the board. So again, this entire thing is just showcasing everything individually. When we look at the army, there's going to be so many little buffs that we're going to go through. But that's it for the Tactical Squad. Let's move on to the Hellblaster Squad. Boom! The heavy guns have arrived. The Hellblaster Squad. Power level 8, they fill in one of your heavy support squads. They have a movement value of 6, weapon skill plus skill 3, toughness and strength of 4, 2 wounds apiece. That's right, 2 wounds apiece. 2 attacks except for the sergeant who has 3, and leadership 7 except for the sergeant who has 8. 3-up save, and they are all equipped with the plasma incinerators. These guns are amazing. So the Plasma Incinerator it has 2 different firing modes. Both of them have a 30-inch range. They're both rapid fire 1. The non-supercharged version, so just the standard version, is strength 7, -4 AP, and 1 damage. So that means if you're firing at Magnus with that bad boy, you are wounding on 4s. But if you decide to supercharge it, it becomes strength 8. So now you're wounding him on 3s and 2 damage apiece. So that can actually cut through quite a few of his wounds, especially when you consider that you're firing 5 of these shots at a turn. There's a chance that you could do 10 damage in 1 round. That will drop him a bracket just from 1 unit of shooting. The thing to be afraid of, though, is that on a hit roll of 1, the bearer is slain after this weapon's shots have been resolved. So got to be careful with that. You do not want to roll 1s for these guys. They are going to want to be standing next to the captain trying to reroll those 1s or benefiting from some sort of a benefit, whatever it is, from a stratagem, if that's available, or somebody around. But the thing is, the rule says it is slain. You've got nothing keeping you alive, so you got to watch out for those. But again, the Hellblaster Squad is absolutely amazing. 30-inch range means it's going to take Magnus at least 1 movement and Psychic Phase to get within range of them to do any damage. And it is very easy to bubble this 5-man squad behind something so that Magnus cannot get to them. These right here, aside from the characters, are probably going to be one of Magnus's biggest targets because they can shoot, and they can shoot well. As for other abilities, they have a Nation No Fear, letting them reroll the morale checks. They have combat squads, but again, you're running them in a 5-man squad, so that rule does not apply. And then keywords, you're looking at Imperium, Adeptus Astartes, Chapter Salamander, Infantry, Primaris, Hellblaster Squad. That's going to be it for them. Let's move on. Now that you've seen the Hellblaster, let's take a look at this Predator. It's got a power ranking of 9. It's another heavy support option. It has a damage table, so the movement characteristic is a star. I'll get to that in a minute. Has a weapon skill of 6, but you really don't want it in combat anyway. Has a ballistic skill of 3+, strength 6, toughness 7, 11 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 8, and a save of 3+. Now the way you've kitted it out is that it has 4 last cannons, so that means it's going to be rocking the twin last cannon on the top, which is a heavy 2, strength 9, -3, d6 damage. And then you've also got the 2 last cannons on the side, which again are heavy 1, strength 9, -3, d6 damage. Whew, that's a lot of firepower, and that can definitely do some damage out there. The sad thing is you've only brought 1. If you had 3, you could use one of the stratagems to make it so that it is always going to be wounding on a 2 because it's strength 9 getting the +1, unless you're shooting something which is toughness 9, which almost never happens, and then getting d6 +1 damage. But you're only running the 1. We can work with that. Special rules that it has are the smoke launcher and the explodes result. You don't really want to worry about those too much. With the last cannon, you are probably not going to be moving this guy too much, except for trying to get line of sight on your targets. But with the damage table, as long as it has 6 or more wounds remaining, it has a movement of 12 and a ballistic skill of 3+. If it has 3 to 5 wounds, its movement gets cut in half and it only starts hitting on a 4+. And then if it's got 1 to 2 wounds remaining, it's pretty much dead at that point, but it has a 3-inch move and a 5+ to hit. So basically this guy's going to be sitting in the back corner. You're going to put something in front of it just to kind of keep it from getting attacked by Magnus. And then you're just going to keep shooting Magnus as much as humanly possible with these last cannons to try and take him out. All in all, an amazing thing. It does have the chapter special rule, so it can benefit from some of the chapter buffs that the characters will give. But let's go ahead and move on to the next thing on this list. We will take a look at the army as a whole and deployment once we've gone through the list. Almost all the way through all the individual models. Next up we have the Devastator squad. It has a power level of 8. It's another heavy support option. The Space Marines in the whole have the same stat line as every other Space Marine. Movement 6, weapon skill, ballistic skill 3, strength and toughness 4, 1 wound, 1 attack, leadership 7, except for the sergeant who has 2 attacks, and leadership 8, 3 up save. And the way that you've kitted them out is that 4 of them have the missile launchers. So when we go ahead and take a look at missile launchers, well, the actual guy himself is going to be walking around with just the bolter and stuff like that, so we don't have to worry too much about him. But let's take a look at missile launchers as a whole. And I've already lost them on this sheet here. There we go. So missile launchers, they have 2 different firing modes. They have a range of 48 inches. You can fire the frag missile, which is heavy D6, strength 4, no damage, or no AP, 1 damage apiece. It's not too bad. That'd be pretty good if you were trying to take out Chaff or Pink Horrors or any of the other infantry type stuff. The main thing you're going to be wanting to fire right off the hop here is 4 of these crack missiles. 48-inch range, heavy 1, strength 8, which means you're wounding Magnus on 3s, -2 to his save, which means he's going to be using that 4-up invuln, and D6 damage apiece. Yep, that's going to definitely put some hurt on him. So when we're looking at the list as a whole so far, we've got a bunch of las cannons. We've got at least 5, 1 on the Dreadnought, 4 on that Predator. We've got the Hellblasters firing a bunch of plasma at him. We've got some missile launchers firing at him. We've got a whole bunch of stuff re-rolling everything. There's going to be a lot of damage coming his way, so we're going to definitely try and figure out some sort of a deployment to make sure that your opponent has to take at least a turn or 2 to get to you, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that it takes a little while to get there as a whole. Let's move on to the last thing on this list, which is a Rhino. Not really much to say about it, but I'll still go over it for the sake of being efficient. The Rhino, the one thing that comes for, that basically all Space Marine players absolutely loved in 7th edition, I still think is an absolute trap in 8th edition. But let's go over the stats of it as a whole. We've got power level of 4. It is a dedicated transport, so you can bring it as long as you have somebody to transport something in it. It has a movement value of, well, it's a star, so it goes on a table. But at full health, it has a movement of 12. At half health, it's movement 6. And with 1 to 2 wounds remaining, it's movement 3. Has a weapon skill of 6, which you don't really want it in combat anyway. Ballistic skill, it's a 3+, then a 4+, then a 5+ on this table. Strength 6, toughness 7, 10 wounds. Attacks are star, so it's 3, then D3, then 1. Leadership 8, save 3+. And it's equipped with a Storm Bolter, which is a rapid fire 2, strength 4, 24-inch range, and 1 damage. It does have the ability of self-repair, which is quite nice, where on at the start of each of your turns, roll a die, and on a 6, it regains 1 of the wounds lost previously in the game, which is quite nice. Again, it has smoke launchers, and it has the explode special rule, and it can transport up to 10 chapter infantry models. And it can't transport anything with a jump pack, Terminator, Primaris, or Centurion model, so keep that in mind. That's nothing really new, but it is something to note, especially if you're playing against it. As for faction keywords, it's Imperium, Adeptus Astartes, Chapter Salamanders, Vehicle, Transport, Rhino. Getting into the whole thing as to why I think it's a trap. The thing is, with the new deployment rule, you cannot move this vehicle and then deploy your models. You have to deploy them first, which means turn 1, if you have guys inside, you are going to move that vehicle up, and then for an entire turn, the unit inside is A, not going to do anything, B, not give any of the R effects out if there's somebody inside who gives R effects. And then on top of all of that, if for some reason whatsoever you managed, or your opponent manages to get through all 10 of those wounds, there is a chance that you will start losing guys on their way out because you have to roll a die for every model in that vehicle, and on the result of one of those models is slain. For each result of 1, a model is slain. So it seems like a little bit of a trap because you spend an entire turn sitting in a, well, I'm going to call it a death box at this point. So there's a good chance that when I'm going over deployment, I'm not going to put anybody in that, but we'll take a look at that when we do the army showcase as a whole, and then we'll talk about deployment. So let's go ahead and take a look at the army as a whole. So we've seen every model individually. Let's talk chapter tactics. Now, Salamanders have probably one of the best available chapter tactics, which is Master Artisans. It makes it so that you can reroll a single failed hit and wound roll made for every Salamander unit each time it shoots and fights. Now, a lot of people were hearing that being like, oh, you can only reroll one dice. No, it's per unit, which means that each of these units are going to get to reroll one of their failed to hits and one of their failed to wounds, which means you don't have to rely on the benefit of having the captain and the lieutenant nearby, but it does help to have them nearby as well. So when you consider that, it means that you can reroll your missiles to hits and to wounds when nobody's nearby. It means you can save your command points for some of the stratagems if you need to. It means that a lot of your flamers are going to get a better chance of hurting people. It means that your last cannons have a better chance of hitting and wounding people. It just improves all your odds as a whole just by being a Space Marine player. I think that's absolutely fantastic. It is one of the greatest command abilities out there, on par with like the Ultramarines one and the Raven Guard. So I think it's a very good ability because you can use it per unit, which is why I'm not going to say to bunch up a bunch of units together. Next up, they also have the abilities, which is just Initial No Fear, where they can reroll all their morale checks. They also have Defenders of Humanity, where as long as at least one infantry unit is on an objective, you are holding it. So that's always a good one to keep in mind as well. When we start looking at the stratagems that they have available, they have all the regular ones that are available to them, so you can start taking some relics if you want to. You can take extra relics, which I will get into in a moment. You have the ability to upgrade somebody to a chapter master. You don't really need to, but I mean, you certainly could if you wanted to. It costs you 3 command points, and you're not going to get those back. And with the loader that you're looking at right now, you're probably going to only get the extra 3 command points. So you're going to be sitting at 6 command points available, and you don't really want to waste half of them on just bumping someone up to a chapter master who can die later on. But when we're looking at the Salamander specific one, it is Flamecraft, where a Salamander can add 1 to the wound rolls for every unit with, or for all the models in a unit with a flame weapon, and basically flame weapons count as anything as a flamer. So that means that your veterans, who are the ones who are going to benefit from this the most, means that they're now wounding on +1. So they are now wounding Magnus on 4s, and they're automatically hitting him, which is awesome. So that's a good one to keep in mind right there. And then you've got everything else available to you, like you've got the Hellfire rounds for the heavy bolter, which your scouts can use, so that scout can opt to not fire all 3 rounds and just fire a single one. And basically, if he hits, it does D3 mortal wounds instead. So that's always a good one to have right there. You've also got the missile launchers there, so they can fire their flak missiles, where if it's a target that flies, you get +1 to hit, I believe. Yep, you add 1 to the hit roll, and if it is a hit, the target suffers D3 mortal wounds. That's always a good one because Magnus does fly, so he does have that keyword, so you can start pumping in more shots right there. And again, you're spending 1 command point on both these, so 2 command points to possibly do D3 mortal wounds, which Magnus can only ignore if he takes the Warlord trait, which we're going to assume he does. Other than that, you've got other stratagems available. You've got like ones that'll benefit you in this fight. You have Death to the Traitors, where if you are getting into a close combat fight with a Heretic Astartes, which Magnus is, every time you roll a 6 to hit, you get to make an additional attack. These extra attacks do not generate further attacks on their own, but it does mean that if you have a melee-based squad in combat with them there, like, I don't know, maybe your lieutenant or your captain, or your captain with the Thunderhammer, those Thunderhammer rolls of 6 can give you more Thunderhammer rolls. So always good to have that available to you. The Warlord traits, the one that you can take that would be pretty good would be the Salamander one, giving your character +1 strength, which means that Thunderhammer is now hitting at strength 9. That means that you're wounding Magnus on, well, still 3, so it's not going to benefit you at all, but it is going to work for hurting other things all over the board. You can take other ones. You have like the Angel of Death, which gives your leadership characteristic, a subtraction of the leadership characteristic for everybody within 6 inches of your Warlord. Gives you a better chance of making sure that those pink horrors start fleeing when they start splitting and multiplying like crazy. Other than that, I can't really think of any that would be super, super good right there. You might actually want to take the Storm of Fire, where each time you roll a to-wound roll of 6 for a friendly unit within 6 inches of your Warlord, you increase the AP characteristic whatever you're firing by 1. Again, you're trying to force Magnus to get into those 4-up invulnerable saves, so if you have something that doesn't do it and he's going to rely on something other than the 4-up, like his, I'm pretty sure it's just his base save is either a 3-up or a 2-up, you can start trying to nerf that down a little bit and make it harder for him to get those, or have to rely more on those 4-up invuln saves. So that's always good as a whole as well. But that's going to be it for the Warlord traits and the stratagems there. Let's jump over to the relics really quick. Not a whole lot of relics that are really going to help you out right now. The only one that's going to really benefit you by being a Salamander would be the, and I've lost it here, I was literally just looking at it. Oh, here we go. The Salamander's Mantle, which gives you a increased toughness characteristic of 1, means that your character is going to go from toughness 4 to toughness 5. Could help you out for some of the weapons that are coming out there. It means that a lot of things are going to be wounding you in different amounts. I'd say go for it. It doesn't cost you anything. Put it on your guy with a 3-up invulnerable save, because that means it's going to be harder to wound him, and it means that he's going to be sticking around a little bit longer, giving out that +1, or probably that re-rolling of 1s. Otherwise, that's pretty much everything I can think of here. You have no Psychers in your list, which is something that I would recommend bringing if you're going to go up against this like heavy army, because it does give you the option of bringing things like Null Zone, which takes away the invulnerable saves, which could certainly help you against Magnus, or Might of Heroes, which gives it the ability that your guy walking around with the Thunderhammer Storm Shield now gets an additional attack, +1 strength, +1 toughness, and when you stack that on with the Mantle, it means he's now toughness 6. So a lot of things are going to have a hard time hurting him, especially if the horrors are getting in combat with him without having the Herald nearby. It means that they're going to be wounding him on 6s instead of 5s. So definitely cutting down quite a big chunk right there. But that's going to be it for the showcase and the overview of the armies. And I can't really think of much more to say right now except for deployment and actually playing out a battle. So there you go, guys. Mostly for Dan there, that's going to be the overview of the two armies and some details on what their buffs are, what their weaknesses are, where you can improve, where you could really want to kind of bolster your defenses, because that's kind of a weakness in the army. So that's going to be it for the showcases and the Tactica. Now to actually see a full battle report with this army going up against that army with all the tactics I've described, and a quick overview of the deployment with a visual to show you what I would recommend doing. So Dan, that one's mostly going to be for you, but for anybody who is a Salamander or Space Marine player having to deal with a crazy powerful army like that, this is where you're going to get the chance to see what a good deployment would be, what some tactics would be, how to make sure that you're getting those good drops on the board, and how to kind of increase your chances of getting that first drop, and also getting a chance to see where and when I would personally use the stratagems and the command points available to you. So, Vault members, go ahead and click the link below, and you will see a battle report with these two armies using the tactics that I've described and seeing everything as a whole. And otherwise, guys, hopefully you enjoyed that. Do me a favor, if you're interested in having your army kind of analyzed and basically seeing what would be really good, what would be really bad, and you have a list that you're just having a really hard time going up against, go ahead and shoot me an email. It's quirk@miniwargaming.com. If I start getting a bunch of these guys, I'm going to start picking them at random, and if we happen to have this channel, or this, not channel, have this show kind of take off a little bit, it might become a normal thing. But I do very much enjoy doing this. I like going over the armies. I like seeing different strategies. I like seeing different tactics, and I love seeing meta lists. If you guys have this one list at your shop that you just cannot beat, whether it's Dark Eldar firing the Scourge or the Ravens at you, or a Brimstone list, or Magnus, or Knights, or Storm Ravens, or whatever it is that you guys just can't figure out how to wrap your head around it, and you're playing this particular army, you want me to take a look at it and see if there's some sort of a tactic or an advantage, or even models that you can add to your army that would make it easier for you to deal with that, shoot me an email. I will try my best to make a video of it for you guys similar to this one. But again, Vault members, to see the full battle and the tactics put into play and show you guys the weaknesses of the Demon Army and the strengths of the Salamander Army, click that link below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the Vault. Happy wargaming.